Good afternoon, everyone. This is Beth Ponder at Train PD. Welcome to Using the Change Agent to Teach Writing with our presenter, Cynthia Peters, and your host and moderators are Beth Ponder and Krista Mosier from TCAL. So welcome this afternoon. We're looking forward to this time with Cynthia. And at this point, we're going to welcome Cynthia Peters with World Education. She's going to be our presenter today. I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you everybody for hosting the webinar. I'm really excited to be able to be here today, and I appreciate all of you who are attending. Being on another Zoom call, I know might not be everybody's favorite thing, but I am really glad you're here. So I'm sharing my PowerPoint now, and I'm hoping everybody can see it. So our agenda for the next 45 or 50 minutes is to do a brief check-in with the second bullet there on the standards. I wanted to just ground us in the Texas standards for writing, oral and written communication, and research. Those seem like the most relevant to this particular webinar that we're doing today. So I don't want to slog through those too much, but I wanted to just kind of use that to frame the presentation today. Then I'm going to show you the change agent online, and I'm going to share your very own username and password. It's a global password that you'll be able to use to log into this resource anytime you want and to share with all of your students. So it's a great gift that we've gotten from TCAL and that all the students and teachers there in Texas have gotten from TCAL is the ability to log in using this global username and password. So more on that later. Then we're going to do a deeper dive into just something very specific from 3 back issues, just to show you, how you can use the change agent to teach writing. And also we're going to look at the audio and think about that too for teaching writing. We're going to also, I'm going to share a rubric for evaluating writing. So that's going to be another thing you'll get out of this. And I actually hope that it can be uploaded to that website so that you can download it whenever you want. It's a Word doc and you can adapt it as needed. And then finally, I want to share the call for articles, the change agent call for articles. Our next issue is going to be on the pandemic, and I'm actually inviting Texas to still submit. Even though we passed the deadline, I decided to extend it for you all by 2 weeks. So if that is interesting to you, that's a great way to teach writing, is to give students an authentic audience to write for in a national magazine. So just a reminder that this is the 5th of 6 webinars. There's going to be one more on June 2nd. We'll have the title and description of that forthcoming. The other 4 were about the census, about teaching basic skills in the context of the census, and the recordings of those are all available at your portal. So now let's look at the standards a little bit. So the 3 areas, as I mentioned, were writing, oral and written conventions, and research. And this is a very text-heavy slide, my apologies, but these are going to be some of the points we're going to cover today as I look at the change agent as a specific kind of source of content that allows you to address these standards. And a big one that is necessary for everybody is the writing process. And so that includes pre-writing, brainstorming, free writing, using mapping and listing strategies to generate ideas, using strategies to demonstrate the writer's purpose and audience. So thinking about audience is really important. Are you trying to explain something, inform people, entertain people, reflect on something? What are you trying to do? And who are you trying to do it for? Gathering information, using sources and not plagiarizing. Organizing your material so that you have, a thesis, and then you have details that are relevant to that thesis. Crafting multiple drafts and revision, so you want people to be able to have that experience of incorporating feedback, writing, getting feedback, incorporating feedback, doing a revision, getting more feedback, working on your flow, working on your transitions, things like that. So editing the writing for proper voice, tense, structure. I know none of this is anything new for anybody who's been teaching writing. Finally, applying proper writing conventions depending on the audience, and that includes using digital and other resources to produce and publish a written work. So you could have it published on paper, you could have it published on a website, or in various kinds of ways. Then for oral and written conventions, this is where computer skills come in a little bit, using technology for things like spell check, which is really handy for people if they know how to use it. And also they know if they can get good at knowing how it can trick you sometimes, you can't totally rely on spell check. You have to be careful about that. Adapt email style to purpose and audience. So, if people decide to use that call for articles and write for the change agent, maybe you would have them submit their article to me, and they would have to compose an email to me, and they'd have to think about who they're writing to and the purpose of why they're writing to me in particular. But then their article would be for a different audience. Their article wouldn't be for me. Their article would be for peers all across the country. So there's a lot of thinking about audience there. So very rich possibilities. Research. So sometimes when you write for the change agent or any writing that you do, you have to look at sources and you have to get information from sources. You have to use quotes. You have to make sure your sources are credible. You have to be critical thinker about that. You have to know how to cite your sources. And we have lots of opportunities to explore these kinds of specific standards as well. So just touching very briefly, kind of dipping our toes into these standards to remind us that, as we travel through all the content that I'm about to share with you, I'm going to try to keep touching back to these standards to show you how teaching with this content is going to address these standards. Okay, so now I want to do something which is give you a tour of the change agent. As I mentioned, TCAL has generously bought a bulk subscription for online access to all of its programs. So this is a really exciting opportunity for you all. And this is a really easy way that you can use this yourself, this username and password. You can share it with all the teachers you know. You can take this information and send it to all of your fellow staff, all of your colleagues in adult ed in Texas. This is something that you can really share widely. So what I want to do right now is give you a tour of the online resources and then come back to the PowerPoint. So I'm going to go now to my browser. So you all should see the change agent now. So when you first get to the changeagent.nelrc.org, what you would want to do first is log in. So you can see that it's defaulting to my login credentials. I'm not going to mess up my system by putting in the TCAL credentials. I'm just going to use mine. But for you, you would put in the username TCAL with a capital T and the password TCAL. It can't get much easier, right? So when you're logged in, you now have access to all of our online resources. And this is a really rich source of materials. And I'm going to spend most of my time on this tour just showing you this in the classroom tab and the issues tab. Okay. If you want to come back later and take another video tour, just go to our top page and click on this button right here and you can get a video tour. And also that's something you can share. If you want to take this back to your fellow teachers in your program, you could have them take this tour. So in the classroom is a really important tab for teachers, obviously. Some things I'll touch on briefly and some things I'll get into more detail. So you'll see a bunch of census pages here. If anybody has been part of my census webinars, you'll know that we think the census is incredibly important, and the deadline for that has been extended to October 31st. So hopefully teaching basic skills in the context of the census is an option for you, and you can get a PDF of all of our census pages here. If you have beginners, you can click here and you can get 3, I think, different PDFs where I just picked the very beginner type articles and put them together in packets somewhat by theme. So sometimes people complain that the change agent is a little too hard for their learners, so I wanted to put the beginner stuff in one place. There's lesson packets right here that you can explore on your own time. There's this, which I really want to take a little more time to show you. It's this index with article reading levels and audio. This is a really exciting thing that we developed since issue 31. And what it is a global table of contents. It includes every article published since issue 31. So if I organize this by issue, I can reverse the order and you see our most recent issues first. Another way I can organize it is by level. So if I click on this word level, it sorts by level, and you'll see that, it starts with ones and some twos and a lot of threes and fours. These are grade level equivalents. There's more information on the website about how I do the leveling, so you can explore that if you want. But you can use this table of contents. If you direct your students here, you can show them how they can listen to audio versions of articles here. And if they know how to sort it by level, they could make their way through all the twos, right? And kind of notice if they start feeling more comfortable going up to the threes. So let me show you what this looks like when you go to an article. Here's an article from our math issue. And you can listen to the article all the way through by clicking this tab, or you can click on these different chunks. So a student can sort of play a chunk over and over again and read it while they listen to the chunk. Another thing that you can do here is you can click on read, and the article shows up here, and underneath there's the ability to comment. So this is something I'm going to talk about more later in the webinar, but I wanted to show you how that's another sort of interactive online thing you can do. So those are some of the most important things that I wanted to share with you. The call for articles is here, where it says invite students to write for the change agent. It goes to a page where it says write for us, and then you click on this PDF of our pandemic call for articles. You see the deadline is May 4th, but I've extended it for you all to May 18th, and there's a slide about that coming up. So those are the main things I want to share with you on this in the classroom tab, but you can see there's a lot more here. The other thing I wanted to share is the issues tab. So the change agent has been publishing for more than 20 years. We have a lot of magazines, and the magazines are not usually newsy. They're more issues based, right? So they don't get very old very quickly. So some of our older issues are still very relevant. So I really encourage you to explore here. Don't worry about the date. If it's from 2012, the content might be on some issue that's still totally relevant. So, explore these back issues. Think about what might be resonant for your students. Click on an issue, page through the PDF of the issue. Pick for every one that you go to, let's go to the Indigenous Peoples issue. You can always jump to the table of contents and sort it by level. So if you decided, I really want to do something on Indigenous peoples, you can click it by level, and you can find, the level that's right for your students. This is just a table of contents for the Indigenous peoples issue. The other table of contents was for all of our issues. Okay. Every issue also has this grid that tells you how the magazine activities are aligned with the College and Career Readiness Standards. And I know Texas has their own standards, but they're very similar to the College and Career Readiness Standards. So, and you'll see how I did it. I didn't use standardy type language. I just kind of used everyday language to describe the standards. And then I point you to which pages in the magazine help you teach to those standards. So I'm just trying to kind of give a lot of handholds to teachers so that it's as easy as possible for them to teach. Okay, so lots of issues to choose from. Math, hair, career pathways, when we fight, we win, transportation, a whole issue that's adult ed students talking about race. It's really powerful. It's really profound, amazing stuff. Celebrations, it just addresses a lot of different celebrations that happen in the year. So if there's something, a holiday coming up, you could look in here and see if there's an article about it. June is coming up soon, and we have this great feature of Juneteenth. So you could actually, teach about Juneteenth, and we have it at 3 different levels. And you can see right here, there's audio versions of 3 different levels of the Juneteenth article. So that would be a really fun thing to go to. And it's not about COVID, so here we have a way to kind of actually focus on something else at times. So you can see the range and the depth of the content. You're bound to find something that will work for you. And when you open the PDF, you can just print out whatever pages you want. If you were in an actual classroom, which you may not be for a while, but when you're back in the classroom, you can do that. Or you can just take that PDF, save it, and email it to your students to read. Any questions about the change agent or anything like that?
A comment that this is wonderful.
Okay.
Anybody, if you have questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box, and we'll let you go ahead, and I will let you know if I get any questions.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm glad I paused to hear about the wonderful. That's nice to hear. Here's the slide again with the username and password. I made it a capital T, and I'll tell you why. When I tried it on my phone, it you type in username, it defaulted to a capital T. And then the rest of the letters come up lowercase. And I thought that would be easier for students. I thought a lot of them might be doing this on their phone. And rather than have them have to make a lowercase t, I thought let's just do it the way the phone tends to default. So that's why I made it a capital T for the username. The password, the default is to be all lowercase, I think. So that's that. And I hope it's really, really simple for your students, and you can get them, have this on their phone, they can save it, it'll just be there, and they'll be able to easily access our audio. And there'll be a slide at the very end of this with that username and password again.
We have a couple more comments. Kelly says, this is so cool. And Dr. Ivy says, she's definitely a teacher. They mostly use phones.
Yes. I know, it's so true. It's isn't it so quaint how we used to have computer labs and we thought it was the thing to do was get everybody on computers, but really it's all about phones now. So, and the change agent, we don't have a phone app yet. We might be trying to develop that, but it's fairly phone friendly. I've done it on my phone quite a lot and had my students do it on their phone, and it's very doable. So just, I wanted to have a slide with the URLs of all of the places that we visited. So I just made this slide so it'll be available to you if you have the opportunity to look at a PDF of the slides. You can have a reminder of what we visited. All right, so now I promised to get a little bit more specific. So I drew articles from these 3 issues: the resilience issue from September 2012, the food issue from 2014, and the most recent, the current issue, Stand Up and Be Counted. So for every issue, when you go onto the issues page, you see something like this. You see the opportunity to download the whole issue. You can jump to the table of contents and sort the articles by level. You can also watch a recording of a webinar that I do for almost every issue. So if you can stand to listen to me even more, you could go watch that recording, and it would be me talking about how to teach with that issue of the magazine. And you could jump around in there and try to get any little nuggets that you wanted. And then also we often have extras that go with every issue. So those are available. For this one, I remember I showed you that at the table of contents, if you click on the read option, you'll get a chance to comment. So I have that kind of pointed out here to remind you that it should say read and comment. I've now realized, but it doesn't. It just says read. But if you click on that, and here's an example of one. So this is from our resilience issue. And what we did was we had 4 learners answer the question, how did you get here? These are students who are in a Bridge to College class, just so happens. And we asked them, how do you get yourself to school every day? How do you literally get here? What keeps you going? And, these students gave these answers. The young man says, my mother, she inspires me. She's my role model. The other young woman says, my son, he motivates me and keeps me going. And then the woman at the bottom says, my friends help me stay on track. And when I feel down, they let me know I can do it. And then we created this option for a student to say, what about you? How do you keep going? And I thought, well, this would be a perfect time to leave a comment, right? So if you direct your students to this spot, they could then put a comment which answers the question, how do you keep going? And now the context is different. It's not about getting to class. It's about attending distance learning classes for the most part, right? So I tried typing a comment here, and I tried to put myself, in the shoes of a student. And this is what I wrote. My daughter helps me with technology so I can attend class. How many of our students have their kids right now helping them get on Zoom, right? Or helping them use their phones in a certain way. She is only 12, but she knows a lot. Thanks to my daughter, I am here. And I thought, wow, this addresses so many of our standards that I went over at the beginning. One of them is just noticing, first of all, it's using technology to publish your writing, using the comment spot, thinking about how you write in this space and then you have to click on post the comment. The software is indicating where there's typos, so that's pretty cool. How do you hover over that typo and fix it? Notice that the spell checker didn't catch that nose typo. I misspelled nose on purpose, and I think the spell checker was so confused by NOES, it just didn't even know what it was, or just left it alone. So we have to notice that sometimes spell checker doesn't catch everything. But you know, there's so many tools here that if you get your students to write 3 sentences in a comment box and post them, and then possibly reply to other people's comments, they're using so many standards-based skills, including replying appropriately to a text. That means they have to understand it, responding appropriately to a question, responding to somebody else's comment, you know, so then they're interacting with each other. They're not in the classroom, but they're saying things to each other, which is great. As a teacher, don't we love it when there's like some horizontal, you know, activity going on? It's not all just from us to them, but them to each other. So this is, you know, just a great opportunity, and you have them writing, you have them using the keyboard, you have them posting. Possibly people will make mistakes here. That would be great. You know, it's a chance to laugh about that. Oh, I hit send before I didn't mean to do that, or, you know, so it's a great literacy, and digital literacy, and just regular writing opportunity. So, and there's lots of short articles, relevant, touching, moving articles that, you know, students can comment on. So yeah, that's one very specific writing strategy using this interactive tool. So now I'm going to go from that resilience issue to our food issue. Everybody's thinking a lot about food during this pandemic. So of course, the food issue came out in 2014. There's no mention of any pandemic anywhere, but I just think food is a universal, you know, it's a universal topic. So again, the table of contents gives you the opportunity to download the whole issue, look at a recording of the webinar that I did, jump to the table of contents, read the issue extras, and also, you know, click on a grid that tells you about how it's aligned with the College of Career Readiness standards. Again, just kind of getting you used to what every issue has with it, or almost every issue. So here's the article that I picked for this one. It's this student from Georgia who wrote about her strategy with her kids at the dinner table. And their family rule is you have to eat everything on your plate. How many of us grew up with that family rule? I definitely grew up with that family rule, and I definitely did not do that to my kids. It was not the family rule in our family. So, you know, I come at this from a lot of different angles myself, and I'm sure all of us do too. And our students totally do. This is something that any of our students, whether they're parents or children, you know, obviously all of them were children of parents at some point or had adults in their lives who either made them eat their food or not, are going to be able to relate to this piece. So let's see. This is a really sweet article. You know, she acknowledges that children don't always like all the food that you serve them, but, you know, they have to eat it. And then she gets the middle paragraph gets into a lot of great detail. Her 11-year-old doesn't like okra. He makes a face while he eats it, but he swallows it with water. No complaints. Nice short sentence right there. Not really a real sentence, but my younger son does not like eggplant. He sometimes whines. I don't like this, but my older son says, eat it. So this is rich with detail. I love this as a kind of like a demonstration writing piece, because as an editor, I'm always trying to get my, you know, the writers to tell me more, give me more detail, show me paint a picture for me, you know, and she really paints the picture here. It's really beautiful. And then she goes on to say, sometimes they look a little sad at the table, and sometimes it takes them longer to finish, but now they're able to eat all foods, and she doesn't care if they don't like all foods, but as a parent, sometimes we have to force our children to do things. So then we have a little writing activity, and the exercises to summarize the problem and Sané's solution to it in one sentence. Now, I would just say in hindsight, this is a little bit hard. This would be a hard job to give most of our students. It might even be hard for any of us to summarize the problem and the solution in one sentence. So as a teacher, you might want to back this up a little bit, and maybe one sentence to summarize the problem and then another sentence to summarize the solution. And then maybe like more advanced students could merge the sentences, right? So that would be kind of a cool activity. They could use a conjunction to merge the sentences. Then there's an opportunity for students to think about her solution. Do you agree with it? Why? If you do agree, why? And if you disagree, what would you do instead? Now, this is not interactive. So as a teacher here, you're going to have to figure out how to pose this question in an email to your students. I don't know what technology you're using to talk to your students, but this could be in an email, and then they could reply to the email with their answer to the questions. Or I don't know if you're using Google Docs or what you're doing, but you'll have to figure out, you could just lift these questions and put it in your own document. Okay, another example of, just a specific change agent article that you can use to teach writing. Okay, finally, our third specific example comes from the Stand Up and Be Counted issue. I won't go through this whole list again because now you're getting used to it, that, for every issue we have these options available. Here's the article I picked. It's about the census. It's got a great title, Still Undecided? Read this. And she makes an argument for why people should fill out the census. The way I'm kind of coaching you to use this, and you can use these strategies for almost any article, is to actually get students to think critically about how well she makes her argument. So she is a peer, right? She is a student she's originally from Haiti. She's an ESOL student in Florida. She is a peer of your students. And they get a chance to kind of be critical thinkers of one of their peers' writings. So it has that horizontal feeling to it. This could be them who wrote this. The writing, it's very clear, it's very accessible, it's got details in it, and just think about how does she pull it off? Does she change your mind? Does she live up to the title where she poses the question, you're undecided, read this and I'll convince you? Does she actually live up to that title? So it's a great opportunity to just take apart the writing and get your students, I call it reverse engineering, right? Like, what works about this article? Why does it work? And make them articulate what works about it, and make them be specific, no kind of, oh, it's really good, no. What actually, show me what works for you here. Because then when you get familiar with that detail, then you can do it too. You can look at your own writing and go, oh yeah, like I need to be more specific here. I need to ask myself if I really was convincing, and did I trot out enough data or enough information? And so I made this sort of awfully ugly slide with these awful yellow thought bubbles, just to kind of show the things that I think stand out here. So, she starts with this opening about how the Romans used the census to have a list of all the adult males who were fit for military service. That's a little bit of a random fact, right? It's not really about the US Census or anything. Let's think critically about that opening. What do you think about that? Does that work? Is it a distraction? Why or why not? As an editor, why did I even keep that in there? It's a good question. Why did I? I thought about taking it out. I thought, it's kind of irrelevant, and I decided to leave it in because I thought, no, it's kind of fun. It's a little bit contrasty to why we have one now. That's not the reason anymore. Let's see, what else? The title, already talked about, is the title effective? And if so, how? Does it draw you in? If not, why not? Let's look at that bottom cloud. Are these details convincing? I don't know how well you can see the details, but there are details there. Like one of them is, I'm going to fill out the census because if I don't, it's against the law. Like I have to follow the law. It's required by law to fill out the census, so I want to follow the law. There's other details there. So, but asking your students, do you think these are convincing details to share? And be able to explain why or why not. Again, no vagueness allowed here. We really have to push people hard because that's how they're going to get it. That's how they're going to be able to translate it over to their own writing. Also, I thought it'd be good to point out the use of the strong I statements, which I love that. I think it makes the writing powerful, grounded in a person. She says, I plan to participate in the 2020 census. And later on in the article, she says, I recommend you learn more about the census. It's just, I think it's a good strategy. And then one of her rhetorical strategies is she poses a question. It's in the last paragraph, the first sentence. She says, would you want to be the cause of your community not receiving the services it needs? I love that. It's it draws in the reader. It's obviously rhetorical. Probably nobody would say, yeah, I want to be that person. But still, it it helps you see yourself in this scheme. So I don't know. So those are some of the things I noticed, and you might notice other things. Your students will definitely notice other things, but just get them thinking and think about that term reverse engineering, because if they could take this apart and say what works about it and also say what doesn't work, because not everything published in the change agent is perfect by any means. They could say, this paragraph is weaker than that paragraph. That would be great. That would be such a good learning. Why is it weaker? How is it weaker? What's weaker about it? Then that's going to translate into their own writing. So I hope that, as your students train their minds around writing by trying out these activities, then, you might have them write their own essay. And I wanted to share this rubric with you. You might have rubric that you already use. I love evaluating student writing with rubrics. I think it's so important. When I've done this with students, it's just made all the difference. And one thing we do when I share a rubric is I spend a lot of time deconstructing the rubric with them. So first of all, I just hand it out, I give it to them, and I help they look at it, and they sort of start to acquaint themselves with it as a document. So it's a grid, it's got columns and rows, it's got points. You can get more points or fewer points, and there's a lot of different areas you can get points in. And so I have them, try to understand this really well, because for one thing, it makes what I'm looking for transparent. There's no mystery here, what the teacher wants. Teacher's being very clear about what she wants and how she's going to grade you. So I like that. It gives students a chance to know what you're looking for. And it also gives them ways to succeed in different ways. So some of them might have a really strong voice, it's powerful and clear and passionate, and they might get high marks on voice, and they might be terrible at spelling or terrible at grammar, and so they might get, fewer points for that. They might, one place to get points is just in presentation. Are there indented paragraphs? Are paragraphs noticeably different from each other? Are there margins? Things like that. It's an easy place to kind of get points or to improve your points. So I want to make this available to you as a Word doc so that you can change it. This might not speak to you exactly, but if you have it as a Word doc, you don't have to start from scratch, and you can just, make it how you want it to be. But I'm just offering that to you to be helpful, and hopefully it will be. So those were my specific choices from the magazines. And I only, you saw we have dozens and dozens, scores of issues. And I only picked one article from 3 different magazines. So I think you can see how much content there is. If anything, you're probably going to feel like it's too much content. Like I don't even know where to start. And if that's your feeling, then I would encourage you to either start by level or start by subject.
Cynthia, we've had some comments. Is now a good time to stop?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so these 2 are specific to the rubric. This is great because I can level my students. Thank you, great rubric. Kelly says, good practice for our ELL students. That's going back to looking at breaking apart the paragraphs. Claire, this is amazing. I've used some change agent articles in the past, and they're engaging and just the right level for my students. Jenny's going back, Jennifer, to talk about how she likes to post and reply in the first article that we looked at. And then Margie had a more general question, and you may want to hold this towards the end, but she says, I used the change agent when it was paper-based. How did the New England Literacy Resource Center or World Ed get it?
Okay. I'll just say the answer to that quickly. The change agent is published by the New England Literacy Resource Center. It always has been, and NELRC is part of World Education. So it's always been housed there, and we've always done a paper version. We started doing the online version like about halfway through the life of the change agent. And we've kind of added on more and more online resources as the years go by. And we're still doing paper as of now. We're trying to figure out if we can keep doing paper. It's pretty expensive to print. So, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
And then Emily asks, may I share the rubric and PowerPoint with my faculty members?
Absolutely. All of this is for you to share. I'm very happy and willing for you to share it all. On that rubric, I don't even have any identifying information. It's just a Word doc. You can just, yeah, please do share it. And please, if you have a staff meeting and you can bring these resources into your staff meeting, you can give them your own tour of the change agent, share the username and password, tell them, share some of these strategies with them. That would be great.
Yeah, Emily can't wait to share. She's ready to take it back. So
yay. And Emily, please be in touch with me. I think my email is somewhere on these slides and somebody can put it in the chat maybe. Please be in touch if you have any questions. I'm so happy to hear from people who are using the magazine. I'm a little bit lonely in my office, or actually not in my office now, but in my home, just creating things. And I love hearing back from people, especially teachers, working with it, and especially under the new circumstances. I'm a classroom teacher, but I haven't had to teach in these new circumstances. So I would really love to hear how it goes. So yeah, stay connected. So I mentioned the audio, and we're going to, in our next webinar, the one that's happening on June 2nd, I think it is, we're going to talk more about using audio to teach reading. So I think we won't spend more time thinking about using it to teach writing. I guess there's just one thing I wanted to say, and if you would like to add anything in the chat, I think now would be a good time too. How could you imagine using the audio? Just as I've been talking about it, I would love to hear your ideas about how you might use it. And while you are adding something to the chat, I'm just going to say one of my favorite things about the audio that's connected to teaching writing. Because you might think, how could it be about writing? It's more about reading fluency, and it definitely is more about reading fluency. But there's one thing about writing that I think is really important, and that is that I feel like listening to the audio teaches punctuation in a really powerful way. Because I think when you hear what punctuation sounds like, it helps you get it. You can say whatever you want about commas and periods, but when you hear what a period sounds like in terms of the reader's voice has a certain inflection at the end of a sentence, it marks an ending, and there's a pause. And there's a certain length of a pause before the new sentence starts. And the new sentence starts with a kind of inflection that helps you know that it's a new sentence. And a comma also sounds a little bit like a pause, but it's a shorter pause than a period. And, we teach comma rules, we need to teach comma rules, but one way that we can teach this is by letting students hear it. It's kind of like another sensory tool they can use to store the information about punctuation. So that's my little favorite thing about using audio for teaching punctuation. Did you all come up with anything? Like can you imagine using the audio? What would you do?
Yeah, so we have a few comments. To hear and practice pronunciation in ESL class, students can listen repeatedly. You speak the way you write. Mm-hmm. Yes, to hear punctuation. I teach students to listen for punctuation. If you have a lower vocabulary, it's good to hear the words so you can learn them. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, some of my students have great communication skills, but need lots of help with punctuation.
Yeah. Great.
And then we have a question. So do you have more about the audio, or would you like to take the question?
I'd like the question.
What strategies have you used or recommend to use these resources for mixed level classrooms?
Great question. So that leveling tool that I shared with you is a great tool. So for example, if you wanted to focus on food in your classroom, everybody could be talking about the similar content. They'd be talking about food, but they could be reading articles at different levels, right? So you could find a harder article for, your more advanced student and an easier article for your less advanced students. And then you could kind of come up with activities where they could talk with each other, across articles. That's one approach, is that there's similar content, but different levels of activities. There's also, I often do different versions of articles. So like that Juneteenth article, the one that was published in the magazine was the level 10. That was really hard, the 10th grade level 1. But then online, there's a level 4 and a level 7. So you could have everybody talking about Juneteenth, but at 3 different levels potentially. Another option is everybody reads the same article, but your beginners you choose a couple of sentences from an article, so they don't have to slog through the whole thing. Those are some thoughts off the top of my head. Let me say a little bit about the call for articles. I really appreciate your questions and comments though. Keep them coming. And if there's anything I don't get to here, please do email me. So remember I showed you the way to invite your students to write for the change agent. You have to go to the In the Classroom tab and then scroll down to invite students to write, and then you have to get to the PDF of the call for articles. So here's what it looks like. This is a screenshot of part of it, so it's not even the whole thing. It's pretty dense and it has a lot of questions, probably has about 15 writing prompts. I want to tell you right off the top here that I have gotten hundreds, and I am not kidding you, hundreds of responses to about the first 3 questions on this call for articles. And I really had to figure out this problem here because I have this problem every time. Everybody speaks to the first question or the first 2 or 3 questions that I pose, and they don't get down into some of the later ones. And I think the reason for that is I do the easiest questions at the top and I kind of work my way up to harder questions as the prompts go down. So I think that's kind of obvious. It's like people just land on that easiest one. And the first question is, how has the coronavirus pandemic affected you? Be specific and detailed, speak from the heart. And everyone's like, okay, I'll do that one. Then I have literally 200 submissions on that. And they're very repetitive, because it's affecting people in very similar ways. So I just want to say right off the top here, we passed the deadline on May 4th. I'm extending it for you guys who are here at this webinar because I would love to get some submissions from Texas. And I want to encourage you to to tell your students that you got word from the editor, that she's overwhelmed with submissions from those first 3 prompts and to go deeper into the list. Back to the call for articles. When you bring the call for articles into your classroom, into your distance learning forum, whatever it might be, one important thing to do is make sure your students have some idea what the change agent is so they know the audience they're writing for. So if they have a way to page through a PDF of the magazine, and then you could ask them, what do you think about, who is this magazine for? Who writes it? Who do you think they're writing for? Get them thinking about the audience is peers enrolled in adult education programs across the country. That's who they're writing for, and they should know their audience. Break down the call for articles, help them. It's a pretty dense document, but help them understand the most important pieces of information. Have them look at the prompts. I'm going to give you more guidance on that later. Could have them talk to each other in pairs. Sometimes people, it's hard to just start writing, so you could have them interview each other to generate ideas. I think that's a great strategy for getting yourself writing. Or you might feel like, I can't write anything, but if somebody asked you questions, you could talk and the person could take notes on what you say, if your students are advanced enough to do that. Then they need to kind of take all the stuff, whatever you do to help them generate material, then they need to organize it. And I can't say this strongly enough. I get a lot of boring submissions. People just skirt right along the surface of something. It's really not very interesting. It's really like what everybody else writes. Or, it's very similar to everybody else's experience, and it doesn't really tell me anything about them. And if you think about what draws you to a piece of writing, it's because somebody's going to show you something, something that matters, something from their heart, something profound, something meaningful. And you could ask yourself, would you be interested in reading this article, and really get your students to challenge each other to be more interesting, to dig deeper, and to find the nuggets, that are worth sharing. So I hope it's okay to kind of lay that challenge down. Get feedback, rewrite, that's just so important. And then that can be submitted to me using the student's own email. So that's a great learning opportunity. Like I already said, Dear Cynthia, attached is my essay, or my essay is right here in the email. That's totally fine if they want to just drop it right into the email and send it to me. But they have to compose an email to me. That would be a great learning opportunity. And then they're going to hear back from me, basically a form letter that says, thank you for your submission and when to expect to hear back from me. So there would be this opportunity for a little back and forth with somebody that they don't know. And then if it involves attaching, that's like a whole thing that it's great for students to learn. Definite work skill and, academic skill.
Could our beginner ESL class write an article from the whole class?
You know, I have had that before. It's a little awkward, but it could work. It could work. We'd have to think about how to make that work. So I'll give you an example of, I did that in the immigration issue. If you want to go back and explore the back issues and you see the immigration issue, the more recent immigration issue, there's two, but the recent one, it has this 2-page spread where a class in Florida did exactly that. And the task was, what is your advice for new immigrants? So these immigrants who've been in the country for longer shared their advice for newer immigrants. And it was really great. They had great advice. It was super great. So something like that, maybe you could do, and it would have to be, you know, what each person would say would have to be really different. You'd have to get each person to say something meaningful, even if it's just one sentence. But if you're thinking about collectively writing it, I don't really know how you would do that. Maybe there's a way to do that, but we can talk offline about that if you want to email me and propose something. I'm totally down to have a correspondence with you about it.
So I think that a follow-up question to that could be, could you pair up students to write an article?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Sure. So here's some of the main things that I want you all to take away, just the people in this webinar, that the deadline for you all only is May 18th. I'm going to hold that out for you. I know it's only 2 weeks away, but I hope that might be enough time to get your students, and I hope it might be sort of exciting enough for your students that they would want to do it. If their piece gets accepted, they get $50. They do have to have a social security number, though. They have to be able to legally work in this country to get paid. So if they don't want to supply a social security number or they don't have one, they can still get published, but they just won't get paid. So remember I said, try not to address the first few prompts. I'm giving you 3 prompts that people have barely responded to. Maybe they're a little harder, or maybe they're just less attractive. I don't know. But one thing I really wanted to hear more from people is about work. And some of our students are frontline workers, and they're essential workers, and they're still going to work in the middle of this pandemic. How is that going? How are they advocating for themselves in the workplace? Or does it feel safe at work? If somebody wanted to write about not feeling safe at work and felt like they had to be anonymous, so I would totally understand that, and they could be anonymous. But if they were willing to write that, I think that's the kind of thing that would resonate with a lot of readers, honestly. A lot of our students are out there, it's tough. So if somebody felt brave and wanted to write about, you know, maybe something that's not working, I think that would be really important. We don't have to be, everything's great, or this is how I'm making everything work. We can say if it's not good. In fact, I encourage that because that's real. The other prompt, the second one, looking ahead, what could or should be different in our society? You know, what went wrong here? Did anything go wrong? You know, could we have been better prepared for this pandemic? How? What should we do going forward? I mean, that sounds kind of tough. That's hard. You know, you have to get into things about public health maybe, but, you know, I really believe that a lot of adult learners would have some ideas here that would be really worth hearing. So I would love if somebody could address that. Finally, how has the pandemic affected different demographics differently? So I don't know about you all, but up here, you know, in our communities that are mostly Latino or mostly people of color, you know, the much higher rates of hospitalization, much higher death rates, you know, just way disproportionate effects based on race. And obviously we all know that age is a demographic that is differently affected. So if people wanted to write about that, that would involve a little bit of research. They would have to cite their sources. That would be a great exercise. Even if they just had 2 sources that were from reasonable, credible sources, that would be such a great article to include. So I'm giving you this little nudge in that direction because I know what my inbox is so full of right now. And so don't do those because too much competition. You know, do something here that I'm not getting. You have much more chance of getting accepted. Make sure that all of your submissions, like every piece of paper has email and name on it because boy, people are like, I put all my contact information in the email, but then on the piece of paper that I print out, there's nothing to trace it back to the sender. So I hate it when that happens. Make sure every piece of paper has contact information on it. And yeah, just more details that I've already said. I definitely warmly welcome beginning literacy and ESOL writers. That's who's reading it. So that's who I want writing it, because that's what's going to be accessible. Whatever you do, do not write something in your language and then drop it into Google Translate and then send it to me. That is garbage. I can't understand it. It's never going to get published. It has to be written in English at the level that you can write at. And I want that because that's the readers that we have. So please, please, please encourage, embrace, people might be embarrassed. Oh, my English is so bad, or I'm a beginner, I can't. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Just, see what you can get down on paper. Even in the most basic way, it matters. It matters to hear from you. And what we're trying to do here is lift up the voices of adult learners to be speaking about this really important global moment, which is affecting all of us very profoundly. So I really want their voices, and I want voices of Texas students. So I really hope you guys can bring that into your classrooms and send some submissions my way. So for this last slide, thought I would point you to those standards in case you want to go check them out yourself. Also the New England Literacy Resource Center, which has tons of teaching tools, and the change agent itself. And remember your username and password. TCall. Couldn't be easier, right? I know we're pretty close to the hour here, but if there's any last comments that I could answer, I would love to do that. And if we don't have time, I'm happy to see your emails when they come.
And we've got a great information. Thank you. This was awesome. So thanks so much. So lots of kudos to Cynthia for working so hard with us. And she and I will work together to get a description for our June session. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. I hope you come back and join us in June. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. It's been great to have this time with you. And I hope to be in touch with you all. So, and don't forget June 2nd, we're gonna have lots more to explore in that webinar.